Welcome to our presentation on getting started with Mikrotik RouterBOARD using the Quickset configuration tool that is provided with RouterOS. RouterOS is the name of the operating system that is deployed in all RouterBOARD products, from the simplest home routers to enterprise class routers that cost hundreds or even thousands of pounds. It's configured using a graphical web-based interface or bespoke software known as Winbox. RouterOS can also be configured using command line scripts. This enables complex RouterOS configurations but is beyond the scope of this presentation. The aim of this presentation is to get you started on your RouterBOARD journey by looking at some simple configuration scenarios using the Quickset configuration tool. Before looking at Quickset, it's worth taking a few moments to look at how my RouterBOARD is connected to the internet and also to my PC. The picture shows from the left the mains power connection, the internet connection in port 1 with the grey Ethernet patch lead, and my PC connected to port 4 using the purple Ethernet patch lead. My PC could in fact be connected to any of the local area network ports 2 to 5. I recommend that the RouterBOARD is configured using an Ethernet wired connection rather than Wi-Fi. To access Quickset from the PC that's connected to the RouterBOARD, you need to open a browser such as Chrome and enter the IP address of the RouterBOARD in the browser address bar here. By default, RouterBOARD issues IP addresses that are in the subnet 192.168.88.10 to 192.168.88.254, with the RouterBOARD having the IP address 192.168.88.1. Therefore, to access the RouterBOARD web configuration page, you need to enter 192.168.88.1 in your browser address bar and hit enter. If you're asked for a login name and password, then the default login name is admin and there is no password. You'll then be presented with a screen similar to this. It may be slightly different if your RouterBOARD does not have Wi-Fi. If you don't see this screen, make sure that the Quickset option is selected here. Also, make sure that the Quickset drop-down menu shows Home AP Dual here. The other drop-down options apply for different configuration scenarios that are outside the scope of this presentation. On the left of the page we have the wireless settings, and on the right we have the internet connectivity settings, and below that the local network settings. In this presentation we won't be considering the virtual private network settings. Near the bottom of the page there are buttons for updating the configuration, resetting the configuration to factory default, and setting a password. You should also note at the bottom of the page is an Apply Configuration button. This must be clicked to save any changes. The first configuration option that we're going to look at is how to set the Internet IP address acquisition method. By default, the address acquisition method is set to automatic. And as you can see, in this case the RouterBOARD has been assigned an IP address and is in fact connected to the Internet. This is because this RouterBOARD is connected to the local network ports of my office router, which is already connected to the Internet. My office router is configured to issue IP addresses automatically using DHCP and provide internet connectivity to any connected devices. Here the RouterBOARD has been assigned an IP address together with my office router gateway IP address. Typically, the only circumstances where you would use automatic IP address acquisition would be if your internet service is a cable service such as that provided by Virgin Media in the UK. Virgin Media would provide their own router to connect to their cable modem, but you may decide that you don't like the Virgin router and that you want to use a RouterBOARD. In that case, you would switch the Virgin router to modem pass-through mode and connect to the Virgin service using a RouterBOARD that is set to automatic IP address acquisition. Another situation where you would use automatic IP address acquisition would be if you're going to use your RouterBOARD as a wireless access point. However, I would caution against this, as devices connected to the RouterBOARD would be on a different IP subnet from devices that are connected to your main router. That can create routing problems for some services such as VoIP. It would also block local connectivity to devices such as printers that are connected to the main router. It is possible to configure the router board as a wireless access point that passes through IP addresses from the main router, but that is beyond the scope of this presentation. Note that the MAC address field is pre-populated with the MAC address of the router board. This can be changed so that the router board is effectively given another MAC address. This is useful if your internet service provider uses the MAC address as part of their method for authenticating your connection. The static IP address acquisition option is typically used on leased line fibre connections, while your internet service provider issues a static public IP address that is unique to you. This IP address would be entered here, together with IP addresses for the gateway and DNS servers. These IP addresses would also be provided by your internet service provider. Here I have entered the static IP address that I have allocated from my office network, together with IP addresses for the gateway and the DNS server. In this case, my office router functions as a gateway and also a DNS server. The most common IP address acquisition method for home and small business users is PPPoE. This is used by fibre to the premises connections, where the router board would connect directly to the internet service provider's termination equipment. It would also be used on ADSL and VDSL connections, where it would be necessary to have a modem in addition to the router board. With a PPPoE internet connection, your internet service provider would issue a username and a password that would be entered here. I'm now going to disconnect the router board from my office router and connect it directly to my VDSL modem, and then enter the username and password for my PPPoE connection. You can see that the service provider has authenticated the PPPoE connection and issued IP addresses to enable connection to the internet. I'm now going to switch back to automatic IP address acquisition for the remainder of the presentation. If we consider now the local network settings, we can see here that it is possible to change the IP address of the router board from 192.168.88.1 to something else such as 192.168.100.1. There's no real reason to do this unless you have some network equipment with fixed local IP addresses that's in another subnet. I'm now going to demonstrate how to change the IP address of the router board to 192.168.100.1 with a corresponding change in the local network IP address range. After I have done this, I will need to log into the router board again using the address 192.168.100.1 instead of the default 192.168.88.1. The new IP address of the router board is entered here. Keep the netmask settings and enter a new DHCP range. Here I have chosen to use the range 192.168.100.10 to 192.168.100.99. Click Apply Configuration and wait a few moments. On some PCs it may be necessary to unplug the connection to the router board to force it to pick up a new local network IP address. As you can see, I'm now logged back into the router board using the address 192.168.100.1. Now, if we look at the wireless settings, you can see that this router board is dual band and operates on both the 2 GHz and 5 GHz frequency bands. Personally, I like to set the network names for each band to be the same and to let the wireless device choose the best frequency band. I'm therefore going to change the network names for the 2 GHz and 5 GHz networks to Premitel Wi-Fi. I'm going to leave the frequencies at auto and leave the default bands unchanged. I'm going to change the country to United Kingdom so that only Wi-Fi standards that are specific to the United Kingdom are used, I'm not going to use an access control list. I am going to set the Wi-Fi password to Mikrotik, and I'm not going to configure a guest network. The WPS accept button is used for connecting to wireless devices that support WPS. To save these settings, I hit Apply Configuration. Here you can see that I have connected my mobile phone to the Premitel Wi-Fi network, and you can see in the monitor section here that it's connected to the router board. Once you're connected to the internet and Wi-Fi has been set up, you should then update RouterOS to the latest version. Mikrotik are continually updating RouterOS, and you should regularly check for updates. Currently this router board is on software version 6.45.8, as you can see here. To start the update process, just click the Check for Updates button here. If there is an update available in the stable channel, just click the Download and Install button, and after a few minutes RouterOS will be updated automatically. As part of the upgrade process, router board reboots and you need to log in again after a few minutes. After the update, we have logged back into RouterOS, and you can see that the software has been updated to version 6.46.5. The final task is to protect your RouterOS by setting a password or changing an existing password. To do that, you simply click the password button and enter the new password and click Apply. To check that the new password has been accepted, just log out by clicking here. You will then see the login screen. Enter your new password and click Login. You will then be taken back to the Quickset configuration screen. That's the end of our presentation and getting started with the Mikrotik RouterBOARD Quickset configuration tool.